In this video, we're going to talk about materials in Maya. So in the previous lesson, we saw how we can create lights and set up a lighting inside our scene. And we also talked about the three-point lighting, which is a technique that we can use to concentrate our attention on one subject, which could be a chair, like in this case, or could be a character. So it can be used for graphic design, industrial design, packaging, marketing, or photography and movies. So we are in the shading part here. We saw some lights, and we're gonna go now to the next topic, which are materials. And we can start to run some preview renderings here in Maya Light. Now remember that if you want to achieve better results on renderings, you're gonna have to move to another software probably, because the Maya Light version doesn't have a proper render engine like Arnold or V-Ray or other render engines out there. So my suggestion is you can create your scene in Maya Lite. You can then proceed to Maya professional version if you want to stay in Maya, or you can use another software and V-Ray, or you can use, for example, Lumion or Twinmotion and so on. So right here, we're gonna work a little bit with materials. We didn't use materials yet. We have a totally gray scene with default materials assigned, which is this kind of a gray flat, not specular material. And we also imported some object from other websites, and we imported some external resource. And in this case, we have this 3drenderpeople.com model of this lady, and she already has some textures assigned. So you can see here that this is probably the most difficult type of material that you can create, which it's composed by textures which are pretty detailed, and they are unwrapped. So they have an unwrap mapping, which is a complex mapping of the material onto the 3D object. So when you work with materials, you need to know that you need to create your material, and then you have to assign it to an object, and you have to make it fit perfectly. Depending on the object that you have, this is a complex or an easy operation to do. Now for characters, that's gonna be a little bit more complex, and there are software out there that can help you to do that, like Armor Paint and Substance from Adobe, or you can use ZBrush or Matbox, and you will find this software also in the channel. So depending if you need to create a material for a chair or for something more complex like a character, or simpler like a cube, then you can see what tools you have here and where you can go next. Now I also want to create here a text to start with the first material. So we have created a text at the beginning of the course, so you can import that, or you can just create one real quick using the same settings with the bevel. So I'm gonna then scale it like that and move it into position. I'm going faster now because we already talked about a lot of these settings and tools earlier, so you should be a little bit more experienced right now. You're not a beginner anymore if you followed all the lessons of the course. So I'm gonna move it a little bit forward and maybe place it there on the floor. There you go. So I have an extra object. I'm gonna start with these and then show you all the other parameters for the material. Now, when you create an object, you can go all the way to the right with the tabs or panels in the attribute editor, and eventually you're gonna find the shading. Shading, it's another way to say create a material. Material can also be called a shader. And you see there, we can assign this simple shader, and in another version of Maya, you also have more shaders that you can use. In this case, you have this other here, but we're gonna just use the standard one, which is this called Fong. And again, in Arnold or V-Ray, then also you have presets that you can use. In this case, we can only use this preset here at the moment. which is a standard material, default gray. Let's call this Maya text. You can name any material just as you can name objects. This is gonna be then easier to find. Don't leave spaces between words or Maya is gonna give you troubles. And let's start here with the type. You can see here you can change the type again, but we have those which can be used for other reason. In this case, we're gonna stick to the standard. So again, select and select the standard shader. Okay, which is gonna be Maya text. And I will also show you where you can find all the materials that you create here in the scene that you're working on. Okay, now you can see there are a bunch of attributes there down below, starting from the color. Then you have transparency. So these are called common material attributes, and then you have some additional tabs here for other purposes, but the first one there will contain the most important parameters. Now you can think the material as a let's say layered result. So it's a result of many layers stacked on top of each other. These layers can also be called channels, and in each channel you can use a color or use a simple value, which can go from white to black or from 1 to 0, or you can actually add a color if you select here a color, which is the simplest thing you can do. It's values which contains 3 information basically. If you use RGB, it's red, green, and blue. So these are 3 values basically when you use colors. But this is the simplest thing you could do with a layer or with a channel. So you can also copy and paste the RGB values if you are doing like graphic design. You want to get the exact color for a particular brand or logo. For example, here I can click and with the color picker and get here to the Maya logo and get that bluish greenish color, which is typical of Maya. And there you go. So you can work with a simple value like a color, or you can use procedural maps or textures. So we're gonna go again from starting from the simplest, and then we're gonna check the others. But there you go. So you have layers or channels, and inside you can place a color. So I'm gonna do the same thing for the pavement here. And one thing that I usually do is to start with colors and names, and then later I can change them really quick. I can change them faster because I already know that I want to find something with that color. So by something, I mean textures. So when I search for textures on the web, I know that there's gonna be that pale brownish color, and then I can move to the next object there, assign a new material by clicking on func, and name the new material, just assign the color that I will use later, and then I can decide if I want to leave a standard color like that or assign a wood texture with wood veneers or something again more realistic than a simple color. But again, we're gonna do that later. Right now we're just concentrating on colors, and we're gonna see also procedural maps, which are available here also in Maya. So I'm gonna switch here to a nice red on this chair, and again you can